Hey everyone, you're here with the Mayday Network, and I'm Michelle Kinney, and having a hard time talking today. It's been one of those days, guys. We were live this morning for our morning show, then back after this terrible news and developing story in Minneapolis. Which, if you want sort of a play by play with different angles of videos and conversation about that, please go back in the Daily Dispatch playlist and take a look at that. Tonight, we want to continue that conversation. Julie, unfortunately, she's sorry she couldn't be here because she is unfortunately under the weather. So we're wishing Julie uh, better health. But the great news is my sister-in-law, Lieutenant Colonel Jacqueline Urso, is here, retired Lieutenant Colonel, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with Mark Kelly and the threats against him. This censure and threats of prosecution, docking his pay, demoting him. This is just all nonsense. We're going to talk about maybe why this is happening, if Pete Hegseth can even do this. And even more so, we're going to talk about the rise of political violence in this country, especially after what's been going on, not just in the last 4 or 5 years, but what has transpired just in the last few days, with Governor Walz in Minnesota, and then I mean the anniversary of January 6th was yesterday, and these threats against Mark Kelly. I mean, this isn't new. We had a conversation actually with Senator Andy Kim on our podcast, on the Mayday podcast, the other day. We published that yesterday, and he talks about this, about what they all face to hold public office now. And we can play that clip a little bit later. But before I bring in Lieutenant Colonel Urso, I want to play this clip. A Perfect Union put this up on their feeds today, and I kind of couldn't believe it. Carl Sagan, 31 years ago, 1995, if you can believe it was 31 years ago, made this prediction about the United States.
Wrote the following back in 1995, and we quote, "I have a foreboding of an America in my children's or grandchildren's time when the United States is a service and information economy, when nearly all the manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues, when the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when, clutching our crystals and nervously consulting our horoscopes, our critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good and what's true, we slide almost without noticing back into superstition and darkness. The dumbing down of America is most evident in the slow decay of substantive content in the enormously influential media. The 30-second sound bites now down to 10 seconds or less. Lowest common denominator programming, credulous presentations on pseudoscience and superstition, but especially a kind of celebration of ignorance."
I mean, my God, a little too on the nose. I mean, it's you couldn't have. I mean, you could write that now, but to see that 31 years ago, I mean, my God, very wise man. I just thought that that was appropriate to kind of play and remind ourselves about. And Brian Williams, obviously, when he was on air, played that. Also, I just want to address there are people saying the picture's fuzzy. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix that, and I can't leave and come back because I'm the only one here. So we're going to bring in Lieutenant Colonel Urso now. Hello, Jacqueline. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Just so everybody knows, Jacqueline is part of the Mayday fam now, which is great. She's part of my fam in normal life, but also part of the Mayday family. She's our military analyst here. And we're going to talk about what's going on with Mark Kelly. So I'm trying to, I want to play something here first. It kind of sets this up a little bit. He was on Good Morning America, and then we can look at the tweets from Pete Hegseth and the documents that went along with this.
Morning, Senator Kelly and Gabby Giffords say they are fighting back.
I have a right, just like every other American, to say what I think, what I believe.
This morning, Senator Mark Kelly firing back at Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's censure, claiming the retired Navy captain made reckless and seditious statements, including in this video directed at U.S. service members.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
Hegseth alleging Kelly and other lawmakers counseled members of the armed forces to refuse lawful orders.
Is there anything in retrospect that you would have said or done differently over these last several months?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
I basically repeated what is in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is the law for the military. Members of the military need to follow the law. It's very simple.
Upon the video's November release, President Trump calling the message punishable by death and resharing a social media post calling for participants in the video to be hanged. Trump later saying he was not threatening death.
I said something that the president and Pete Hegseth didn't like. And because of that, the president said I should be hanged, I should be prosecuted. This is un-American. And this sends a chilling message.
How do you respond to critics who say your message risks being read through a partisan lens inside what should be a nonpartisan military?
It's not partisan. I'm a member of the Armed Services Committee. I'm on the Intelligence Committee. And I would have expected that if this president said anything about what we said, it would have been, of course you don't follow illegal orders. But not this guy, because he looks at this as maybe somehow as a threat to his authority.
The censure will result in a demotion of Kelly's rank and retirement benefits. Kelly, who served over 25 years in the U.S. Navy, and his wife, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, vowing to fight the action with everything they've got.
Let me make this perfectly clear, though, that Gabby and I are not people that back down.
No way, Jose.
From anything, from any kind of fight.
Now, this censure is more of an administrative action. It is less severe than a court-martial. The defense secretary is warning that the senator, his reaction to this may result in discipline and that it could subject him to criminal prosecution or further administrative action. But as you heard there, they say they're fighting back and they have 30 days to respond now.
That's a very strong couple, both of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, I kind of, it's remarkable. Before I get your reaction, Jacqueline, I just want to show this tweet from Pete Hegseth. This is the defense secretary, not the secretary of war, because it's not the secretary of war. He said 6 weeks ago, Senator Mark Kelly and 5 other members of Congress released a reckless and seditious video. We all saw that back in November. I'm just saying this as an aside. That was clearly intended to undermine good order and military discipline. As a retired Navy captain who is still receiving a military pension, Captain Kelly knows he is still accountable to military justice. And the Department of War and the American people expect justice. Therefore, in response to Senator Mark Kelly's seditious statements and his pattern of reckless misconduct, the Department of War is taking administrative action against Captain Mark E. Kelly, USN, retired, U.S. Navy. The department has, hi Pumpkin, the department has initiated retirement grade determination proceedings under 10 USC, I don't know, the legal things, with reduction in his retired grade, resulting in corresponding reduction in retired pay. To ensure this action, the Secretary of War has also issued a formal letter of censure, which outlines the totality of Captain, for now, Kelly's reckless misconduct. This censure is necessary process step and will be placed in Captain Kelly's official and permanent military personnel. This goes on, more craziness, if you continue to engage in conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline, you may subject yourself to criminal prosecution or further administrative action. And I just want to say that I always appreciate the comments to what he writes. Adam Kinzinger, former congressman, Adam Kinzinger says, "You're such a dork." And then Tom Joseph reminding Pete Hegseth of his history of sexual assault. But Jacqueline, what are your first thoughts here? Because we've talked at length about the first amount of threats against Mark Kelly and the threat to court-martial him and all of that, and how there really wasn't much of a standing there. What do you think about this censuring, about docking his pay, about demoting him to a lower rank?
Well, thanks for having me on, Michelle. And before I give the answer, I'd like to give this with some context in that I was a staff judge advocate in the Marine Corps as a major for 2-star and 3-star generals. And 3-star generals are alternate show cause authorities, which means that they are the first line of decision-making on whether to punish a Marine officer or a naval officer within their command. So me as a lawyer providing legal advice to 3-star generals, I've worked on officer misconduct cases for 5 years as a lawyer in the Marine Corps. So I'm providing this information with that background to give you a little bit more context to where I'm coming from.
So what you're saying is, you know your shit, Jacqueline. You've been there. So you know, and you know, this is like what you did in the Marine Corps, essentially, right? To read this stuff and to know this.
Right. Officer misconduct was a very big deal for the Marine Corps. And as a 3-star general, you're in charge between 30 to 50,000 Marine officers, and you are the one that makes the decision. So I was the lawyer for that general officer before it had to go up to the SGA, to the CMC and the SecNav to make the final decision. So with that in mind, 10 USC Code 1370 is the first code that talks about retirement of voluntary Marine Corps and naval and officers in the military in general. And the first quote is, "They shall be retired in the highest permanent grade in such an office determined to have served on active duty satisfactorily." So that's while on active duty, right? The Navy, the Marine Corps, the Army, whoever, they make a decision that you've served satisfactorily at that grade and you get to retire at that grade. Here, they're trying to reduce him after the fact for misconduct that they think has occurred after he's retired. The only way to reduce an officer is if they've attained that rank by fraud, if they've had substantial evidence in light of retirement that there's misconduct, like the officer has committed misconduct in prior ranks. So did they serve at that senior rank in a virtuous manner, or do we need to demote them to the rank in which they did serve in the most virtuous manner, right? So a Navy captain retires or is about to retire, and they find out misconduct occurred while he was a lieutenant commander. Then they make a decision to do a board of inquiry to determine what is the proper rank in which they should retire. Another way to reduce them in rank is if there was a miscalculation made in determination of that retirement grade, because they have to calculate, you have to have your high 3 in order to retire at that senior grade. And then the last one is applicable by the Secretary, determined by regulations according to the Secretary of Defense and the Secretaries of the Army, Air Force, Navy. So the first thing is, did he commit misconduct or attain his rank of captain by fraud, or while he was captain, did he commit misconduct? And in this case, no, he didn't. They're charging him with this seditious behavior after he's already retired. Now, is he subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice? Absolutely. So is that letter of censure authorized? Yes, it is. But for them to try to reduce him, they would have to give him due process, which is notice and a fair hearing. And the SecNav instruction 1920.6 is the one that governs the boards of inquiry in determining whether an officer, right, can retire at a certain rank. So they would need to pull him back onto active duty and provide due process through the board of inquiry to have the determination that he committed misconduct while he was a captain in the Navy, and therefore he deserves to be reduced because he didn't serve at the highest grade in an honorable manner. Now, the only way to pull somebody back on duty onto active duty once you're retired is under 10 USC 688. And that says for national security purposes. And then there's Article 2 of the UCMJ, and then there's the DoD instruction 1352.1 that talks about the Marine Corps or Navy has court-martial jurisdiction over retirees. They don't have jurisdiction over administrative procedures. So they don't have authority to pull Senator Kelly back onto active duty to provide him due process under a BOI, Board of Inquiry under the SECNAV instruction, to determine that, whether he's served at the highest grade possible. And then they're talking about misconduct that they think occurred, right? Alleged misconduct after the fact, after he's retired. So the whole thing just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I hope that breakdown of regulations kind of squares the circle a little for you.
Yeah. So you're saying basically like the only way that they can do this threat, it's an empty threat essentially, because they would have to go through so many layers of what exactly that you just described, right? Like having to send him back and then do this and make him answer to this. And did he become a captain because he did something fraudulent? Like you can't just retire and then say something that the president doesn't like and be censured or demoted or have your retirement docked or be, court-martialed. I mean, all of this is ridiculous. And again, this shows how incompetent this administration is. Why do you think that they're doing this to him? Because they're not doing this to anybody else that was in that video.
Right.
Just them.
Just to kind of clarify a little bit, the censure is within their jurisdiction. They have the authority in a censure because he is still subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
I see.
So
I see.
Is the censure crazy? Is it, is there no basis for it? I definitely don't think that he's committed any crimes to receive censure, but the censure itself, they have the authority. What they don't have the authority to do is pull him back onto active duty to give him a board of inquiry to determine at what rank he should retire, right? Because there's federal law and DoD instructions in Article 2 of the UCMJ that says the only way you can bring somebody back is through a court-martial process. You can't bring somebody back through administrative procedures. And that's the only way to reduce them in rank is to have an administrative procedure according to the SECNAV instruction 1920.6.
Okay.
Right? So you have to have a BOI, right, with due process to determine whether he's retired at the proper rank, but they can't bring him back onto active duty for administrative procedures. So the whole thing is just right. It feels like an empty threat, and it's all for show and all for good content. But it also seems like in that tweet that we read through, it seems like he was kind of needling and prodding the senator to say, if you respond to this censure, then we're going to take it a step further. Knowing that Mark Kelly is going to respond and knowing that anybody within their right mind would. So Mark Kelly, so people know, he did respond, and he said the following: over 25 years in the U.S. Navy, 39 combat missions, and 4 missions to space. I risked my life for this country and to defend our Constitution, including the First Amendment rights of every American to speak out. I never expected that the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense would attack me for doing exactly that. My rank and retirement are things that I earned through my service and sacrifice for this country. I got shot at. I missed holidays and birthdays. I commanded a space shuttle mission while my wife, Gabby, recovered from a gunshot wound to the head, all while proudly wearing the American flag on my shoulder. Generations of service members have made these same patriotic sacrifices for this country, earning the respect, appreciation, and rank they deserve. Pete Hegseth wants to send the message to every single retired service member that if they say something he or Donald Trump doesn't like, they will come after them the same way. It's outrageous and it is wrong. There is nothing more un-American than that. If Pete Hegseth, the most unqualified Secretary of Defense in our country's history, thinks he can intimidate me with a censure or threats to demote me or prosecute me, he still doesn't get it.
I will fight this with everything I've got, not for myself, but to send a message back to Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump. Don't get to decide what Americans in this country get to say about their government. Now, I mean, he's talking about you, Jacqueline.
Absolutely. I mean, if Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth don't like what I'm talking about right now, they could probably come down and try the same thing.
Right.
But I want to speak truth to power, and I appreciate, Michelle, you giving me this forum in which to do it.
Yeah, no, listen, we feel so fortunate and grateful that you're here, Jacqueline, to walk us through some of this, because I mean, we are instinctually, this stuff always just seems insane, not just because at face value it seems insane, but the people who are doing it are unqualified, incompetent people. Maybe this isn't fair to do, but this is the side by side of the two men here who are in this back and forth. And yes, that is a real picture of Pete Hegseth, just so people know. Now, so Mark Kelly had that response, and Pete Hegseth went on the Charlie Kirk show and had something to say. Now he starts talking about military things that, again, I think the average person, including myself, would not necessarily understand. And I think sometimes the way that he says it, he sort of commands this omniscient, all-knowing, way of talking military, jargon. But it all kind of sounds like nonsense. Maybe you can clarify that for us. So I'm going to play this.
Yesterday, you announced you're going to seek a reduction in Senator Mark Kelly's rank as a result of his statements about possibly defying orders. One of our viewers, Elizabeth, has asked us, she's wondering, she said, why not bring charges against him? She wonders how you reached that decision.
Well, we went through the regular process, and we have evaluated those statements, not just that one video, which was incredibly reckless. He knew exactly what he was doing. By the way, he was the senior member of that video. He's the only one we have jurisdiction over because he's retired, means he's receiving a pension, money from the government, which means he's still subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And watching the, hissy fit that he's been throwing ever since shows us just how over the target we are. He knew exactly what he was saying. He understands the rules. He understands he's still subject to UCMJ. He understood the doubt and uncertainty he was putting into the process by vaguely alluding to illegal orders, but never pointing to what that would mean underneath the Trump. So he knew, and he understands, and the reaction underscores how serious this action is. Reducing a rank or pay is a serious administrative action that sends real signals that we take these things incredibly seriously. So he's got the time by statute or by directive to reply. We'll review after that. But this is, I don't think anybody should minimize how significant this is. We don't do it without understanding that, and we're following up by the book, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
What's your first response to that?
I mean, do they have jurisdiction over him? Yes, because he did retire from the Navy. So that's why they're going after him out of the other, 5 other individuals that were in that video. They don't have jurisdiction over anybody else.
Okay.
So that's a valid point. The reason why they didn't take him to a court martial is because they're going to get laughed out of court.
Right.
I mean,
That kind of was my next question, is like, what are these people in the military gonna say when they if brought something like this, if they bring something like this to them, they're gonna be like, what? I mean, it's laughable, right?
He literally recited the language within the UCMJ Article 90 saying that you shall not obey illegal orders. Like, he didn't say anything outlandish. He basically reiterated what the rules are. And as a lawyer to a commanding general who wanted to provide any guidance on legal matters to his Marines and Marine officers, I would make sure that we reviewed the script and that we quoted the script, right? We quoted the rules of law. Don't give your opinion in any matter. Just recite what the rules are. Quote the UCMJ, quote the Administrative Separations Manual, quote the SECNAV instruction, right? You can say these things to educate your people on what the rule of law is. Just don't go beyond that and start giving opinions. And that is exactly what Senator Kelly did. He provided the information and the language within the Uniform Code of Military Justice under Article 90. Article 90 talks about violation of legal orders. So within that discussion, is what is an illegal order, right?
Mhm.
What is, and how do you go about doing that, right? And that you should not obey illegal orders. It's all cited within the UCMJ. So he didn't do anything outlandish. He didn't
Right.
provide opinions. He just basically recited the law, which is a valid exercise of his First Amendment rights. He has First Amendment rights as a U.S. citizen. All U.S. military service members have the First Amendment right. It is couched with a balance of good order and discipline.
Mhm.
But in this case, Senator Kelly didn't say anything outlandish to illegitimize the rule of law or good order and discipline or service discrediting or anything like that.
Yeah.
He's basically recited the law, and there's no issues with that.
Right. And again, this is Pete Hegseth, the king of content, and he loves this entire administration loves theater. They are cruel and again incompetent, but they love a show. And this feels like a show, especially after having backed down right from the first threats against him. You met Senator Kelly a couple weeks ago and Congresswoman Giffords. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, what an outstanding family, right? Both of them are inspirations to me. They both served their country. I mean, Congresswoman Gifford took a bullet for us, took 5 bullets for us, and she's still up there fighting for democracy and freedom of speech. And he's such a well-rounded, articulate, experienced leader that this nation needs in a time of crisis that we're in right now. And it was just an inspiration to be in his presence and be able to speak with him. He's just a phenomenal person and has so much experience and service to this country that he is the role model in which I would like to emulate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we're too old. Maybe we're just old people thinking this, Jacqueline. But like, there was a time also in this country where to be an astronaut was like, whoa. You know what I mean? Like, what a big deal. Astronauts, whoa. Like, revered. And not only did this guy serve in combat, but also in space. And I think about that, Gabby Giffords actually put up a tweet recently. Is it this one? Yes. She responded to his response to Pete Hegseth and reminded us all of that, exactly what you said, Jacqueline. This week marks 15 years since I was shot. Watching the president and his administration target my husband for speaking out is beyond disappointing. It's a disturbing abuse of power that should alarm every American. Mark Kelly is driven by principle and duty. No bully can diminish his unwavering commitment to our country. And again, she was the victim of political violence and political threats. I mean, it's kind of the overarching theme here, right? Is putting a target on the back of your political opponents and using all of the levers of power that you have to intimidate them and to silence them and to hopefully maybe send your own cavalry of people after them. I mean, I think that, a good example is what has happened to Governor Walz. His daughter was, his daughter Hope was interviewed about the decision from him and the family to back out of the race. And she said that it was nonstop threats of violence, harassment, the levels that I don't think the average person actually understands. It's volume and it's extreme. And I can only imagine what's in Senator Kelly's inbox right now, and his voicemails and the kinds of threats that he's receiving and his wife after everything they've been through. And, the senator was in space when the Congresswoman was shot in the parking lot. And she was a political target. She was there doing duties as a Congresswoman, meeting with her constituents. And, one of her staffers died. He died. And just so people know, like that That's him. Gabe Zimmerman was his name. And he was a young man working for his congresswoman. And he was also shot by someone, out for blood, literally. So I think it's important to remember that when we're talking about kind of the drama, right, back and forth between Pete Hegseth and Mark Kelly. Now, he's been doing the media rounds. I'm sure you've seen him, Jacqueline, on TV the last few days. And I know when you met him, you said something. You introduced yourself and made it known what it is, what your background was, and offered your services if he required, and that was a different circumstance. I mean, things have changed a bit since then. But I want to play this clip where he talks about, his plan to fight back.
Censure letter, which you call bullshit. It includes an apparent threat of criminal prosecution if you engage in any similar conduct going forward. Yet you're adamant that you're going to continue to speak out. What actions are you going to take in response to what the DOD is doing right now? Are you going to sue Hegseth? What's coming next?
Well, we have options. I have attorneys. I'm not taking this lying down. We're going to, mount a defense because this is significant. I mean, what they're trying to do to me sends a message to all these other retired members of the military, veterans, active duty service members, and just U.S. citizens that if you say something that this president or this Secretary of Defense doesn't like, they're going to come after you. They're going to try to stifle your speech. They're going to shut you up. So I'm not going to back down from these guys. And if you look closely at the censure letter, this wasn't just about that video. They go beyond this. They're looking at what I've said over months. They have things that are not accurate in there. But they also talk about how I criticize them over firing admirals and generals. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. I have oversight responsibility over Pete Hegseth. When he makes a bad decision, it's not only my right, it's my obligation.
We've heard.
So again, exercising his First Amendment right. When you retire from the military, I know that there's limitations, I'm sure, just like there are to our First Amendment rights as civilians. But, do you lose your right to speak your mind when you retire from the military?
No, and even as an active duty, you still have a First Amendment right. Does it need to be balanced more with good order and discipline and service discrediting and the rule of law within the military to have, a chain of command and obligation to obey military orders? Absolutely, but that doesn't mean that you're stripped from your First Amendment right. And especially as a retiree, you would have a little bit more leeway in making your objections known because you're no longer wearing the uniform on active duty.
Right.
So your effects on the chain of command is minimal at this point when you are, when me as a retiree, I'm not wearing the uniform anymore.
Right.
Now, Senator Kelly, is he a senator? So does his voice carry a little bit more weight? Absolutely. But you have to balance that with his constitutional responsibilities as a senator and the oversight of the executive branch. So I completely concur with Senator Kelly in that it's his obligation, it's his duty to question the decisions of the executive branch in the Department of Defense. And I say Department of Defense, it's not the Department of War, because you actually need an act of Congress to change the name.
Right. And so it was all just, again, theater to be changing the name to the Department of War, which again, they were signaling to us what was coming in the weeks that followed. But they spend like millions of dollars to change the label on all the bases around the world.
Right. And now you're talking about money, right? And pots of money and congressional appropriations. And in the Marine Corps, as a lawyer, I needed to make sure that my general and staff were using the money appropriately. And that was with a purpose and timing that was appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was within the congressional appropriations rules.
Right.
And if you don't follow those rules, you go to jail. It's one of the actions that, can be taken is
right.
You can actually go to jail if you violate fiscal rules. And here they are just using appropriations, in the wrong manner, not designated. There's no purpose. There's no time. There's no amount that justifies them going around the world and changing the names from the Department of Defense to Department of War. It's like, do what I say, but not what I do.
Right.
We hold them accountable to the same standard that every other Marine and naval officer is supposed to be held to.
One would think. And again, like, I know this is bigger than just like one particular act of retribution. But again, like, this is Pete Hegseth has a stick up his ass about January 6th, because the 5th anniversary of January 6th was this week. In the days and weeks that followed, back in 2021, he was supposed to, he was part of the National Guard, right? That was going to go to Washington, D.C. to guard the Capitol for Joe Biden's inauguration. And he was deemed to have extremist views. And so they told him he couldn't come. And I'm sure in his way thinks, well, my rights to express myself were, you know, violated because he has white nationalist and, like, you know, white supremacist tattoos on his body, not to mention the things that he has said. But they weren't telling him he couldn't serve, and they weren't demoting him, and they weren't censuring him, and they just said that he couldn't come. And he's, you know, he's all hurt about it and will be forever. But I think he's also just like an angry little man who goes after people that he could never live up to, people like Mark Kelly. I want to play another clip here where he was on Lawrence O'Donnell the other night. He was talking about his career service and why they're going after him.
Because I spent 25 years in the United States Navy, because I flew 39 combat missions. I almost got shot down a bunch of times. I had a missile blow up next to my airplane once. I flew in space 4 times. Because I had that long career of service, they think this gives them the right to go after me personally and to threaten me with criminal prosecution or execution because they just very simply didn't like what I said.
I mean, that seems like a simple explanation. I mean, I'm sure you agree with that.
Absolutely. They're weaponizing the rule of law in an effort to suppress disfavored speech, to chill the effect of dissonance, to send a message to the rest of the military to not speak up, not have the moral courage to say what is wrong. They're trying to suppress every person in the military to just blindly follow their orders.
Right.
And that's not the military. The military is a living, breathing, thinking machine. I mean, you're constantly going to school, whether you're enlisted or you're an officer. In order to get promoted to the next rank, you have to qualify and go to school and get certificates and get diplomas.
It's not easy. I mean, it's hard. I mean, just being your family member, watching you go through this process, it's like very involved. It requires a lot from people, a lot of commitment and hard work.
And it requires people to think, because you don't want somebody that's a robot. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking to suppress speech so much to have such a chilling effect on dissonance that people are just robots and just follow along because they don't want to risk their life and their career. And it's just the opposite of what an apolitical military is supposed to be all about.
Right. And they don't want people who ask questions. They don't want people who push back or maybe suggest that something should be done in a different way. And they made that very known just in the beginning during Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing, talking about JAG officers, but of course, pronounced in a way that is offensive, and also communicates how he feels about lawyers in the military, because the lawyers in the military are the people telling them, no, you can't do that. And he said that they were going to get rid of anybody that got in their way. And what have they done? They've done exactly that. Trying to make an example out of Senator Kelly. Right, exactly. And, I again, just want to put this up here. This is this man's resume. U.S. Navy captain, combat fighter pilot, NASA space shuttle pilot, NASA space shuttle commander, International Space Station assembly and delivery missions, U.S. Astronaut Hall of Fame. Like, it's unimaginable that we're living in this time, Jacqueline. I know you and I talk about this all the time, and you know, if you want to express this or not, I always think that you got out at just the right time. You retired in the summer of 2024, right?
I did. My last day of active duty was actually October 31st, 2024. I went on terminal leave. I went on leave, took vacation from the beginning of August. So I got out right before the elections occurred.
Right. Yeah. And to think what a different world, not just country, we'd be living in right now. And I just want to play this one last clip of Mark Kelly, just because I have them all, and so why not? This is him on CBS Mornings.
Well, first of all, I spent 25 years in the United States Navy. I flew 39 combat missions. I flew into space 4 times, all in service of this country. I wore the U.S. flag, every uniform I've ever worn. And they didn't like, the president didn't like what I said in the video, and he said because of that I should be hanged, executed, prosecuted. Pete Hegseth was going to prosecute me under the Uniform Code of Military Justice for saying something that is in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's nonsense. It's also hypocritical because what I said in November is the exact same thing that Pete Hegseth said
Years ago.
in 2016. Same thing, almost word for word. Let me tell you what this is about. This is pretty simple. This is about stifling people's speech.
Exactly. And yes, and Pete Hegseth did say that. And I believe it was Fox News is where he said it. You can Google it. There are receipts. It's all over Twitter, Blue Sky, wherever you get your content. Go find it. It's people think that this stuff you can't. I'm like, guys, the internet lives forever. But this last thing he says outside to a gaggle outside the Capitol.
Like it. That's one of the reasons they have censured me. And then at the end of the letter, they threaten criminal prosecution if they don't like what I say going forward. Let me make it perfectly clear. This letter, or anything that Pete Hegseth says or does to me, is in no way going to affect the way I do my job and represent my constituents in the United States Senate. Ain't happening. So, his option, right now is he can continue with this kind of bullshit, or he can go take a hike.
Again, and I'm so glad he's out there fighting back, and I hope that he has security and all, because again, all Donald Trump is and Pete Hegseth are doing, in addition to trying to stifle and silence and intimidate him, is putting a target on his back. And I just want to throw this tweet up, was put up yesterday from Gabby Giffords, his wife, former Congresswoman, about Melissa Hortman. Melissa Hortman, Mark Hortman, and their dog Gilbert, their golden retriever, a few months ago they were assassinated. She was assassinated in her own home. She was a legislator in the state of Minnesota, and Donald Trump could not have been moved to even say he was sorry it happened. And again, these are people who were targeted politically because of the things that Donald Trump and his, I don't even know, movement of horrible people have said about her, to her. Again, targets being put on people's back. And these are just ordinary people, local legislators who don't have the means to have security details and things like that. And which leads us to today, Jacqueline, because like it or not, this ICE in Minneapolis today, they executed a U.S. citizen in broad daylight, and it was a political execution because there were people there protesting what they were doing under a fascist regime, and they shot a woman in the face and killed her instantly and orphaned her 6-year-old daughter. Jacqueline, I have to I would love to know, I mean, not love to know, but can you share with us, like, where were you today when you heard that news?
I was actually in class. During a break, I checked my text messages and saw your text message to me and Julie. And as soon as I got out of class, I logged into the Mayday Network on YouTube and I watched your segment to inform myself of what's going on. And when I started seeing and hearing the gunshots and the screams, I got sick to my stomach, and I'm so disgusted with this administration and what they're doing. They're just trampling on the United States Constitution. They're wreaking havoc and distress and violence within our streets. They've pitted Americans against each other. They've trampled on the rule of law, the Constitution. They've just tore up, and international norms and international law. They've just decided to just disregard and go back to a time where we were much less safe during this pre-World War II, pre-UN charter type of law and order within the world, the liberal world order. It's just disgusting, and I want to do something so bad. I want to serve my country again. I'm sick and tired of them doing what they want and just disregarding the rules. I fought and served for my country and the United States Constitution for 20 years. And I was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan and to the Korean Peninsula and to Europe and all over in support of this democracy and our freedoms. And to see this administration do what they are doing right now and trampling on constitutional rights and murdering people in the streets, it's just disgusting to me. And I want to do something so bad to serve my country. And I want to put these guys in place. I want to hold them accountable through the rule of law. And then it's going to be a national rebuilding. It's going to be a generational struggle to rebuild American society and get this distrust out of government and start focusing again on serving the American people. And I want to be part of that.
I mean, brilliantly said, Jacqueline. And again, thank you for your service. I know sometimes it feels like not enough to thank you, but we are so grateful for what you've given to this country. And and while I can only imagine, like, serving your country for 20 years and to see not just the violence in the streets and like this Gestapo style, police force we have now, and to your point, you just said, watching this administration topple over the Constitution and rip it up. Do you ever have moments where you feel like, why did I do this? Do you ever feel like that?
I mean, in the abstract, right? Looking in the general picture, sometimes I question, what was my service for?
Right. And I've heard many people say this, and that's why.
I think I've struggled with it, after I got out of the Marine Corps, and I went backpacking around Europe for 6 months just to figure it out. Just to fight those demons and figure out, like, what was my service for? Put it in the larger perspective. And it's taken me a year to kind of come full circle to realize my service was worthwhile. I did serve honorably. I did contribute to supporting and defending this Constitution. I did take part in national security in a positive way. And, at first I was kind of running away from it. And we had the conversations over Christmas. It's like, I'm ready. I want to get back into the fight because I feel like my service was worthwhile. And I feel like I have something else to offer this United States of America. And it needs to be served by people that are patriots, that believe in the Constitution, because the Constitution is only as good as the people serving it. And right now, we've got a lot of people in government that are not serving the Constitution. They're serving their own political and economic interests. And it's just disgusting to me. And so this is going to be a generational struggle. It's not going to be a turnaround if Donald Trump is no longer in the political arena. We're not just going to be able to close the chapter in this book and move on and pretend that, that it didn't happen and let's forget about it. I mean, we tried that with Joe Biden, right? He said, America's back.
No,
and
right.
Realized 4 years later, it's not like that. This is going to be a generational struggle for years to win back, integrity and truthfulness and trust within the American government. And I want to be part of it.
Jacqueline, I know we've talked about, maybe what your plans are, the things that you're thinking about. But when you were in Europe, did you think about, how lucky we are or were to be Americans and have the lives that we have? And not to say that there's not freedom and democracy in Europe. There certainly is, but there's varying degrees of it, right? And same in South America, where you also traveled to, ironically enough. What were your thoughts, just like, being in those countries and experiencing, what life could be like there and compared to what it's like here?
Yeah, in Europe, it was nice because it's a Western civilization, right? But I also knew that the dollar was strong and the U.S. passport was the strongest passport in the world. So I had no issues, maneuvering through Europe. They've respected the Americans with World War I and World War II and what we've done for freedom and democracy across the continent. I've gone on many tours and met many different people within Europe, and they've always provided that respect for me. Oh, wow, you were in the Marine Corps for 20 years in America. Like, we love Americans. It was like, and I guess maybe sometimes people would take it for granted, but our grandfathers were the ones that were fighting and sacrificed in Normandy in World War I and, in World War II. And so now I reap the benefits of a nation that has provided, efforts and money and the nation's treasure in young men and women in support of freedom and democracy. And so it was a very confident feeling, walking around Europe, knowing that they are free, and it partly free because my country's forefathers sacrificed so much, to make this. And like you said, you walked through the Normandy, cemetery. I took a field trip to Normandy and spent 3 days there. At first, I did 4 hours of the museum.
Yeah.
And then I did another, 4-hour field trip out there.
The Overlord Museum, the one where they have all the German, is it that one or is it a different one?
I don't know the name of it, but it was the D-Day Museum.
Yeah.
And
okay. That's the same one. Yeah. Same one.
It was such a moving experience. And I had tears in my eyes as I was going through just watching it. And then to actually go out and walk on hallowed ground and realize the sacrifices, and these young men that were 18, 19 years old, and to see what they've done in going from ship to shore and the difficulty and the cliff that they had to climb up. It was just, such a moving experience. And I feel like sometimes my sacrifice of fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan is nothing compared, to what they've done. And I'm very grateful that my country and my fellow, countrymen had done what they've done for freedom and democracy, that I was able to walk through Europe in such a free, liberating manner. And then I went to Costa Rica. I spent 6 weeks in Costa Rica, and wow, what a difference.
Yeah.
Does that make? It was, every day was a struggle. And I've, tried to brush up on my Spanish, Espanol, as much as I could. But just the everyday liberties that we take in a free Western society is not really available for those people within Costa Rica and those, those visitors within Costa Rica. It's just a different mentality and a different atmosphere, different relationship between them and their government, between them and their history. And so I was very thankful to have gone there to learn and to experience. But I recognized that Costa Rica was not necessarily the place for me, and that I was ready to, come back to Western society.
Yeah. It's when you mentioned to walk on the hollow ground and to look down and see the cliffs. I mean, when you stand at the top of that cliff and you look down, knowing that the Rangers scaled their way up with Germans shooting at them at point
blank range.
Yeah. It takes your breath away. Like if you can ever, I urge anyone listening to this, if you can swing the cost of travel, go. It is honestly one of the most important and profound moments of my adult life was walking through there. And I said this to Julie the other day, and I was wondering, I wanted to get your thoughts on this too, is that, so we're 2 generations removed from those soldiers who went to World War II in Europe and in the South Pacific. Do you think that maybe our generation and others we're just so removed from it because we've never had the tangible remnants of the war surrounding us? Because I always think of, growing up in Europe, you're around battlefields. You could have a grandparent being like, hey, I fought a battle over here. See that bullet hole in that building? And knowing that at any moment, you might be bombed or your town might be bombed. Like, we've never had to go through that here on this continent, in this country, because we've been protected by 2 oceans. And not to go down the rabbit hole here on foreign policy, because we're gonna do that hopefully tomorrow or the next day, and we'll have a separate conversation. But just the mentality of people and taking things for granted. I was wondering what you think about that, just being in the places that this actually happened.
Yeah, I think you're right. The American content, the majority of the American people, other than those that live in Hawaii, were protected by 2 oceans. I mean, in order to get any semblance of World War II, you have to take a trip to Hawaii and go to the USS Missouri and pay your respects there to Pearl Harbor. That's really the only ground in which, is hallowed in the United States for World War II purposes. To remember. And then we've got the World War II Memorial, which they've done a great job in Washington, D.C. And I think that represents, the United States. They have the stars, and each star represents X amount of service members that were killed within the, in the war. But for the most part, how many people go to Hawaii? How many people have the time, the money to get to Hawaii to make that journey and pay their respects to Pearl Harbor? In everyday society in the United States, you walk out and you're not really affected by what the war. I mean, I walked through Berlin and there were still pot marks, in the buildings.
We were talking about that, like being over there and seeing, she was like growing up in the Soviet Union and, and after the fact going to Berlin, she was like, you see people with like missing limbs and people walking around, like it's fresh. It was fresh there. I mean, she was only 30 years removed from the end of the war when she was in the Soviet Union as a child. And again, like it's everywhere. You can't escape it. You can't escape it. And, what was it? It was like the Civil War. I mean, we have our Civil War battlefields here. We go on the bus tours. We, put on our fanny packs and our visors and walk around and learn about the history. But for them, like, it's close. It's imminent almost. I mean, Ukraine is right there. And you've got Vladimir Putin, again, not to go on down this rabbit hole, but like Vladimir Putin knocking on their door saying, I'm coming for you too.
Yeah, and I was in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, because I want to make sure that I've learned about national security from their perspective. Because you can learn everything that you can from the American perspective, but you don't really understand what it's like until you learn it from the perspective of the locals. Right. So that's why I went to, the D-Day Museum, and I went and walked Normandy. I went to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, and I went to Auschwitz, and I went to Birkenau. And like, why? Like, those are hard things to do. But I wanted to understand the gravity of the situation. And with Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they live through the dangerous and gravity of the situation every day. Right. They're walking outside their door and in their capital, and they don't want to say anything, too outlandish, because they don't want to get kidnapped, because there's local Russians that are, surveilling them. Right. I walked past the Russian embassy, and I think it was in Estonia, and there was cops on both sides because there was like graffiti and there was all these protests. And they had a big eye in the skies in the Russian embassy. So I'm walking by and I'm like, well, do they know who I am? I mean, I've been deployed 4 times to Europe working on the Russian problem set, like, do they already have my face? Do they already know who I am? I mean, I'm a lawyer in the Marine Corps that had 2 SSCI. Here I am, walking right past the Russian embassy, just like looking at it going, oh my gosh, am I on their list too? And I'm an American. You can imagine being an Estonian or Latvian or Lithuanian that you just got your independence, in 1990. 25 years ago,
Right.
or 30 years ago. I can't even do the math right now. Is it 35
Yeah.
years ago?
Math is hard.
Right? Like
Yeah.
it's still in their mind, because the people I'm talking to are my age. They remember growing up in the Soviet Union.
Exactly. Like I mean, you see pictures of little baby Julie in Soviet Union. I mean, it looks like it's from like 1930. Like they live in a different world. It's a different world over there. And to your point too about the surveillance and fear of being kidnapped. I mean, there was an announcement today that ICE has a multi-million-dollar contract with this company. I wish I could remember the name of it right now, but it's been used by the Israeli government to digitally surveil Americans. And they're going to start using it on all of our social medias. So just, if you're listening to this right now, just know that this is coming. Go to Aaron Parnas's Instagram. He did a little video about it today. He explains it better than I will. But like, it's the surveillance, right? And then we're watching ICE now. The violence that happened today, the violence that they're bringing to the streets of America every day. And we're watching people being dragged out of their cars, dragged out of their homes. For what? Having brown skin, or maybe having a green card, or maybe saying past their visa, and then throwing them in a concentration camp. I mean, what does that sound like? We've been here before, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly like the Nazis.
Yes.
And I think I was in Europe, in Berlin during the fall, and I remember texting you and my brother going, I'm crying as I'm learning all this stuff. It's just devastating. I mean, I went through Auschwitz and I had to walk through the gas chambers, and I walked down. It was like 2 weeks before the election. I just start crying hysterical. And I just say, I just don't want this to happen again. And I don't want it to happen in America.
Yeah, exactly. And and again, like, they're trying to tell us today, especially after, I mean, there's videos now, and I showed this earlier. Again, if you're just joining us, I did a video earlier today about the horrible shooting execution that happened in Minneapolis today. The federal government's now trying to tell us that didn't happen. It didn't happen certainly the way that we saw it happen. They're trying to tell us that the ICE agent was run over. The president of the United States wrote that he was run over and that he was being hospitalized. This man was not hit. He was hardly touched. His first shot missed the car. The second and third shot was from the side, and he walked away and got in the car.
He literally was hanging over the bumper at point blank range, shooting the woman in the head. She's an American citizen. She was trying to drive away to get out of their way.
Yep, exactly.
And then they say he acted in self-defense. It's just
which is bullshit. And which, of course, they were out with that immediately. They couldn't wait. There's been no investigation. Not to mention, when there is a shooting or any act of violence, like something like this, even if it's for whatever reason it occurred, the law enforcement officer is not supposed to leave the scene.
No, they sent him away and just drove him away to get him out of his office.
And then they wouldn't let EMS in. They wouldn't let the firefighters, the rescue truck or the ambulance in. They had to come in, take this woman out of her car, not drag, but they all were lifting her, several firefighters lifting her, having to carry her halfway down the block in order to get her on the outside of the perimeter of the crime scene to perform CPR. That is what we're dealing with in this country right now. And while I have not checked the news in the last hour and a half, I did see, and this is where I asked Jacqueline to check up on the flag code, because there's some stuff going on, right? In the last couple months, Donald Trump signed an executive order basically saying that we can't burn flags in the United States anymore. And if you didn't know this, flag burning is free speech in this country. It always has been. But Donald Trump signed an executive order basically saying, no, it's not.
Yeah,
so there was a protester in Minneapolis in the hours after this today who stood outside with an upside down flag like this, which is distress, and he sets it on fire. And I'm going to play this clip right now. Why is it not working? Oh no, what happened? Oh no. Jacqueline?
I'm here. Can you hear? Can you see me?
No. Oh no.
Can you see me? Michelle's going out. I'm going to try to come back in and talk you through what's going on with a citizen in Minneapolis. And while she's gone, I'm going to talk about that I've done some research. There's back in the I think in the 70s, there was a federal law that was put in place saying that you cannot burn the flag. And then in 1989, there was a court case, a U.S. Supreme Court case, Texas v. Johnson, where Johnson was a citizen of Texas and he was burning the flag in protest of the Vietnam War. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the majority of the court, within a 5-4 decision, agreed.
I don't know what just happened. I'm so sorry. Keep going.
The Supreme Court agreed with Johnson that burning the flag constitutes a form of symbolic speech that is protected by the First Amendment. The majority noted that the freedom of speech protects actions that society may find very offensive, but society outrages alone is not justification for suppressing free speech. And since then, they've tried again, Congress, to submit new federal law, and that also was overturned by another court case. So after giving a little bit more history and the Supreme Court case providing a freedom of speech in the burning of flags, I'll hand it back over to Michelle.
Jacqueline, I am so impressed. If that had happened to me early in my times doing it, I would have had a panic attack. So God bless. Great job. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, my computer just like, my internet just completely cut out and it was giving me all. And then I tried to get on my phone. I don't know what happened. So, okay. Is it happening again? What is happening? So here's the flag burning video. I'm going to play this. Okay. What is going on? Jacqueline, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
There it is. So let's say the police officers or ICE go after this man later tonight. Did he break the law by doing that?
No, he did not. As I had stated before, and I'm just going to kind of sum it up a little bit more. The first Federal Flag Protection Act was passed by Congress in 1968. But then there was demonstrations against the Vietnam War, and Texas v. Johnson was the Supreme Court case, and it settled in 1989 with a 5-4 decision. Siding with Johnson, saying that, burning of the flag is a symbolic speech and it's protected by the First Amendment. So even if we don't like it, it's still protected by the First Amendment.
Right. And if Donald Trump signs an executive order saying that that's, a felony and you get 1 year, I think it was in his executive order, it says you have to go to prison for 1 year. Can he do that?
No, it's unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has already ruled.
Right.
Through federal legislation, right? So you had Congress acting to pass legislation, the president signing it through the executive, the executive power to enact it into law. The Supreme Court, through their, judicial review, decided that federal law was unconstitutional. It violated the First Amendment of the Constitution. So you had 3 branches of government acting within their constitutional powers of checks and balances, to determine, that the actions of Congress and the executive in filing this federal law was actually unconstitutional. And now you've got the president unilaterally using executive action to try to implement, this as a federal law in violation in violating, making it criminal.
Right.
now you don't even have the Congress acting on behalf of the people. You've just got the executive acting unilaterally because he can't get the legislature to pass any legislation on behalf of the people. It's just ridiculous.
And I think it was Nancy Pelosi said yesterday that the House of Representatives especially has rendered themselves completely useless, and they've just bowed over to Donald Trump and just handed him all the levers of power and said, here, master, do whatever you want. So regardless of Donald Trump's executive orders, and I wanted to play that because, I think in the wake, and I got a notice on my phone that there's protests going on in New York City tonight. There's usually protests going on about something here, but I think that this is pretty pointed, and I think that there will be more. Again, if you didn't know this, I just want to remind people that this execution in broad daylight today happened 1 mile from where George Floyd was murdered. So this area especially has been through this before. And we talked about Melissa Portman, the Minnesota state legislator who was assassinated, murdered, executed, whatever word you want to use, her and her husband and her dog. This all happened in Minnesota. Tim Walz, Minnesota is going through it, but really it is a microcosm, I think, of what's happening at large here in this country. And so somebody in the chat, Soup Bone, said, but why would you want to burn the flag? Doesn't matter. For the same reason, why would someone want to say, I hate my country, or say something about Donald Trump or Barack Obama or anybody? Just because we don't like it doesn't mean that it's illegal. We might not agree with the sentiment, but it is our right to say so. And thank God for that we have this still, at least for now. Jacqueline, any parting thoughts before we go?
The flag was upside down as a symbol of distress for the American democracy.
I was trying to do this before my computer froze, but yeah.
Kind of similar to the silhouette in the Mayday Network's.
That was intentional.
So I think the flag being upside down as it was a protest to the American government, in that they're destroying our American democracy, and lighting the flag on fire is just kind of emblematic of the democracy of the United States just being burnt to shreds to the ground. I think it was a symbolic gesture to object to the oppressive nature of the Trump administration's totalitarian government actions.
I totally agree. And I think also I'm just interpreting this in my own, through my own lens, but taking ownership back of the flag, because it is ours, and whatever we want to do with it is our right. We want to hang it, we want to fly it, we want to burn it. It is our right to do so. Jacqueline, Lieutenant Colonel Urso, thank you so much for joining us. If you're just joining us, popping on, this is Lieutenant Colonel Jacqueline Urso. She's retired from the United States Marine Corps. She is our military analyst here at the Mayday Network, and we're so grateful to her for being here. Everyone will be back here in the morning at 8 a.m. Eastern for the Mayday Morning Show. Might be here by myself. It depends on if Julie starts to feel better. We'll see. But regardless, one of us will be here. And so we hope you'll join us there. Please like and subscribe to the Mayday Network channel. It helps us tremendously with the algorithm. And also, if you're subscribed, you'll be the first to know when we do lives last minute, like we are tonight with Lieutenant Colonel Urso. So everyone, please take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourselves. Call the people you love. Tell them you love them. Everyone, take care. We'll see you soon.